Look, what is happening in New York and Washington right now, frankly, it is a circus. Nothing more, nothing less. A political circus orchestrated clumsily by people who have never held a rifle in combat a day in their lives. What do we see? We see Nicolas Maduro, a bus driver turned president, now standing before a Manhattan judge in an orange prison jumpsuit, screaming that he is innocent, that he was kidnapped. And the crowd in Washington, from the White House to Congress, they are clapping. They are congratulating themselves on a brilliant military victory. A nighttime raid with 200 special forces operators. Sounds heroic, doesn't it? But stop for a moment. Turn off the television and look at the map. Look at the physical reality. What the hell have we just done? We have just committed an act of war against a sovereign state, abducted its head of state, and brought him to the U.S. to face trial like a common drug criminal. And we expect the world to stand up and applaud? No, never. Even our closest allies, the puppets in Paris and London, even they are trembling. The French deputy ambassador to the UN told us to our faces that this action chips away at the very foundation of international order. When the French, who usually follow the U.S. like a puppy dog into every stupid military adventure, have to speak up in objection, we have gone too far from strategic wisdom. The truth is, this so-called rules-based international order that the neocons and the globalists have been harping on about for 20 years, it is dead. We killed it ourselves the night we sent troops into Caracas. The UN Secretary General says we violated the UN Charter. He is right, but the issue is not the law. International law is just a fig leaf for power. The issue is strategic stupidity. What is the purpose here? Let's apply basic military thinking, purpose, method, and state. The purpose is to remove Maduro. Fine, he is gone. The method is special forces. Done. But what is the end state? Who takes over? The people at the CIA, who haven't predicted anything correctly since the Berlin Wall fell, they assessed that Delcy Rodriguez, the vice president, would be the best positioned successor. It is laughable. We remove a dictator to replace him with his right-hand woman. That is Washington's genius plan. They think if you just change the person, the regime changes. No, it doesn't work that way. Venezuela is a mess of gangs, corrupt military, and abject poverty. Capturing Maduro solves absolutely nothing. It only creates a dangerous power vacuum that Russia or China or even Iran will be very happy to fill. Look at history. We must always look back at history, or we are doomed to repeat the mistakes of madmen. In 1989, President George H.W. Bush did the exact same thing in Panama, Operation Just Cause. We sent in 27,000 troops, captured Manuel Noriega, also on drug trafficking charges. We threw him in a Miami prison. The media cheered then, just like they are cheering now. They called it a victory for justice. But ask a simple question. Did the flow of cocaine into the U.S. stop after Noriega was captured? No, it increased. It exploded. Because drugs are a matter of supply and demand of economics, not a matter of one individual. Arresting Noriega was just removing a competitor for the other cartels. And now with Maduro, we are repeating the exact same script. We are cutting off the head of a hydra, and 3 more heads will grow back. The crowd in Washington, the uniparty that includes both Speaker Mike Johnson and the Democrats, they all support this. Mike Johnson says this isn't nation building. It is a demand for a change of behavior. A cheap play on words. When you use the military to overthrow a government, that is regime change. And regime change without a post-war plan, that is suicide. Mike Waltz, our ambassador to the UN, tries to justify this by saying it was a law enforcement operation, not a war. Go tell that to the Venezuelan people. Go tell that to their military. If Russia sent Spetsnaz to Washington, kidnapped the U.S. president, and said this is just law enforcement, would we accept that? Of course not. We would consider it a declaration of war. The hubris of the American elite knows no bounds. They believe they are the exception, that they stand above the laws of physics and geopolitics, but reality is knocking at the door. and it is knocking with a rifle butt. We are seeing resistance from Russia and China at the Security Council. They are demanding Maduro's release, not because they love him, but because they see a dangerous precedent. If the U.S. can do this to Venezuela, they can do it to anyone. This will only accelerate the formation of the BRICS bloc, accelerate the collapse of the dollar, and further isolate the United States on the world stage. We are shooting ourselves in the foot while thinking we are shooting the enemy. And let's talk about our military. Mike Johnson says we are not occupying that country. Thank God for that. Because we can't look at the numbers. The U.S. military is in the worst recruiting crisis in its history. We are short tens of thousands of recruits. Our ammunition stockpiles have been scraped bare to send to Ukraine and Israel. We do not have enough soldiers, enough 155 millimeter shells, enough Patriot air defense systems to sustain an occupation in a country as large and rugged as Venezuela. The Amazon jungle is not the Iraqi desert. If we get bogged down there, it will be a second Vietnam, but worse, because it is right in our backyard. The CIA says they analyzed scenarios for Maduro leaving, but they claim they didn't focus on the use of force. Lies again. They always want to use force. It is the only language they understand. But they don't understand logistics. War is decided by logistics, by industrial capacity, not by spies in suits at Langley or loudmouth politicians on Capitol Hill. President Trump says on television that I am in charge. He is right. He is responsible for this decision. And even though he says we are not at war, this action has placed us in direct confrontation. There is a massive contradiction within the administration. One side wants to withdraw from endless wars, but the other side, the neocon advisors whispering in the president's ear, they want to flex muscles. Capturing Maduro might satisfy the Republican base in the short term. The polls say 2/3 of Republicans approve. Of course they do. Who doesn't like seeing a bad guy get caught? But the duty of a strategic leader is not to please the mob. The duty is to protect the national interest. Does throwing Maduro in jail lower gas prices in America? No. Does it make the southern border more secure? No. It might even create a new wave of migration from Venezuela when the country falls into chaos. So where is the benefit? The benefit is in the pockets of defense contractors, the people who will sell more weapons, more surveillance gear, more security contracts. The benefit lies in distracting the public from the catastrophic failures of the domestic economy. Look at the reaction regarding Maduro's wife, Celia Flores. She was also captured, injured, and appeared in court looking battered. Is this the image we want to send to the world? An image of a superpower bullying women and kidnapping foreign presidents? It reminds me of the senseless brutality of the Roman Empire in its final days. When they no longer had the strength to manage the borders, they resorted to performative acts of violence to mask the rot inside. We are witnessing the collapse of American soft power. When you have to use commandos to solve a diplomatic problem, you have already failed. Diplomacy is the art of compromise and silent power. This is the act of a desperate thug. Senator Jim Risch says there possibly could be hearings. Possibly. It is pathetic. Congress should have been overseeing this from the start, but they have abdicated their responsibility. They have handed the president the powers of a king to launch war whenever he feels like it. And now they pretend to be surprised? Back to the core issue, Russia. Why do I mention Russia? Because Venezuela is a Russian ally in the Western Hemisphere. Moscow has invested billions of dollars there. Rosneft holds major stakes in Venezuelan oil. Do you think Putin will sit still? No. He is a chess player, cautious and patient. He will not send a fleet to rescue Maduro immediately. He will watch. He will let the U.S. sink into this political quagmire. And then he will strike somewhere else, maybe in Ukraine, maybe in the Middle East, or maybe through economic warfare. The U.S. acting unilaterally and illegally like this only gives Russia the excuse to act more decisively in Ukraine. They will say, look, the U.S. does what it wants. Why can't we protect our security on our border? We have handed Putin a priceless propaganda gift. We have proven that the West is hypocritical. We talk about Ukraine's sovereignty while trampling on Venezuela's. The contradiction is so obvious, even a child can see it. What is the end state? It's finished. The delusion that the U.S. can rearrange the world to its liking is over. We no longer have the industrial capacity, the internal unity, or the respect of the world to do it. The capture of Maduro is just a small spark in a large fire that is consuming the old world order. What do we need to do? It is simple. Retrench, secure our own borders, rebuild our manufacturing economy, stop interfering in the internal affairs of other nations. If the Venezuelan people want to overthrow Maduro, that is their business, not the business of U.S. Special Forces. But the crowd in Washington won't do that. They will continue to escalate. They will continue to print money, and they will continue to lie until this whole house of cards collapses. Brace yourselves, because what we are seeing today is just the prelude to a much more tragic symphony, a symphony of arrogance and inevitable collapse.